not just a contractor who goes from job to job to job, wondering what the heck happened. Have you ever had a situation? I heard the boss just sold this job for $100,000. He's making $100,000 and I'm here scraping by for an hourly wage. And they think that you just made $100,000. What they don't know is that if you don't run this job tight, you're going to lose your shirt. Today, I want to talk about what Dave Ramsey and Robert Kiyosaki would say if they were hanging out with you around the fire after a day of hunting in Montana for elk with your bow. How do we go from cash flow and deposit stress to profits? Hey everybody, I'm Dominic Rubino. Welcome to the show. Today, we're going to be doing our favorite thing. We're going to be talking about the business of the contracting business. Because remember, I want you to be a business person who just happens to run a contracting company, not just a contractor who goes from job to job to job, wondering what the heck happened. So today we're going to be talking about cash flow and deposit stress, how to go from cash flow and deposit stress to profit power. And what I'm going to do is take lessons that I've learned from Dave Ramsey and Robert Kiyosaki. And what would they tell you? What would they tell every business owner, every contractor out there? I can't get my words today. What would they tell you if you had coffee with them? Like I'm dying to have coffee with you. Now, why these books in general? I don't know if you've read it. I know most of you have read Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover. If you haven't read it, it's pretty simple. It's a simple and proven plan. I like it because it's proven. You can see how it works. The book is dead easy. It talks like I talk. Very simple, very straightforward, but powerful, right? It shows you how to take control of your money. No gimmicks, really just discipline. Like we were talking about in a previous episode where I talked about time management with James Clear and his book, Atomic Habits. Don't need gimmicks. You just need discipline, simple systems, right? The other thing Dave Ramsey's book focuses on, I think, is when I look back on it, it focuses on cash control before growth. So you don't just want to grow and not be able to control your cash. You need to make sure you control that cash before you grow so that you can use the money wisely, and teaches you how to manage what you earn before you chase more. I used to say this, and I don't know where I learned it, and it's not a very fancy saying, but it's not what you got, it's what you do with what you got. And that might have been something I used a long time ago when I had a really cheap bike and I was doing triathlons. I needed an excuse to say why I had a cheap bike and everybody else had a fancy one. It's not what you got, it's what you do with what you got, right? For some reason, that just reminded me of Rocky. I think it was Rocky 2, where he's down in the dumps and he goes and he trains and, he's still gritty and that's how he wins, as opposed to the time he gets all fancy, has all the tools, everything at his disposal, and he doesn't do so well. So same thing, right? No gimmicks, just discipline. Focus on the things you need instead of the fancy stuff. Anyways, the other thing Dave Ramsey's very well known for, a lot of you know this, is baby steps, right? Get rid of the chaos, replace it with structure. Get rid of the chaos, put simple systems in place. The same thing you hear me talking about here, which is obviously why I'm a big fan of Dave's. I want you to be debt-free. I want you to be a savings first kind of contractor, and spend intentionally. We've had lots of guests here talking about, buying big pieces of capital equipment and how they justified that, how they waited a little longer than they might have needed to, but made sure that they knew what they were doing before they made that big spend. So I'm not here to tell you not to buy the toys. What I'm saying is spend intentionally, build a budget, have your numbers right at hand so you know what you're doing. Speaking of which, there's something that we use here called Checkpoint 90. We talk about liquidity, assets, sales, and overheads. If you ever have any questions about your numbers, we have a very simple report that shows you how to turn your numbers into words. And you know why that's important? Because we're contractors. We didn't go to school to be an accountant. And so sometimes, and some of you are good with the books because your books do tell a story, but it might be hard to read. If it's written in a language we don't understand, not a lot of good, right? But we have something that benchmarks you against the industry. If you ever have any questions about it, please let me know and I'll walk you through what the report does and how it helps you, or how other, contractors are already using it. I guess the other thing for Dave Ramsey is it's really just financial peace of mind and confidence. So you know where every dollar goes and why. You hear me talk about that in the foreman training when we do the dollar exercise. For those of you that aren't familiar with the dollar exercise, here's how it works. Let me ask you this first. Have you ever had a situation where you're listening to your crew talk and they say, "Hey, I heard the boss just sold this job for $100,000. He's making $100,000 and I'm here scraping by for an hourly wage." And they think that you just made $100,000. What they don't know is that if you don't run this job tight, you're going to lose your shirt. Hey, I went back and listened to the episode and I realized I hadn't told you how to text me. And I apologize for that. If you're interested in taking part in the Foreman and Supervisor 101 training, great way to learn about this concept and dig into it in a lot more detail. It goes for 6 weeks. It's an hour a week. It is extremely powerful. The last 2 classes have had over 20 companies in each. We kind of oversubscribed it. We stop at 20 because I don't want to have more than that in one class. And what that does, it gives everybody a chance to participate. I think you agree that's a pretty important thing. In those 6 modules, we talk about how to manage people, how to manage our time, how to manage workflow on the floor, and how to solve problems without always running to the boss or the foreman. So if you want to know more about it, the first thing is you have to get on the wait list. That's how we run this. After you're on the wait list, we'll invite you to an information call. That's how we run it. If you're interested after the information call, then you can apply to be in the foreman training. And the reason we do that is because we want to make sure the people that are in there are serious. There really are only 20 spots. If you're interested, shoot me a text message. My cell phone's 315-903-7853 and just say foreman training, and then we'll get you the info. Thanks. But they think because that job sold for $100,000, you made $100,000. That's not the same thing, right? That you just need to know where every dollar goes and why. So some of you have read Jack Stack's The Great Game of Business. Maybe one day I'll do an episode on that, but I'm going to reference that a little bit here as well. And by the way, when you go read the book, you're going to be like, hey, Rubino, this thing was written in 2003. Why are you giving me something old? Why aren't you giving me something new and fancy that everybody's talking about today? Well, look, we've all read this book, and many of you too. It's 22 years old, but the reason that we keep rereading it because it's good. It doesn't need to be new. It's good. So you just keep doing what works. That don't need to get fancy, which brings us to the other book. This one's even older. It's a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it's written by Robert Kiyosaki. Now, kind of a funny joke. I remember way back in the day when I was doing, coaching somebody, I suggested that he go to the bookstore and buy the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Well, he misunderstood me. And he went into the bookstore and said, hey, I need to buy a book. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he was not able to find that. So when we had our next coaching meeting, he's like, Dom, that book doesn't exist. There's no book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm like, no, dude, it's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Anyways, Kiyosaki, another great writer, very simple, very simple. There's even pictures in this one, which makes it easy for me. I like simple pictures, but it kind of changes my mindset, right? How do you go from working for money to making money work for you? This, by the way, is a fantastic book to give your kids. It's that simple to read, but it's super, 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 super powerful. As a matter of fact, this was, we just talked about this in a coach training. We've got a team of 5 coaches as well as me here, and we do training and support internally, as you'd imagine. Just like you train your people on tools, we train here as well. And we were all talking about this book, and to a letter, all of us have given this book as homework to our clients when they're moving. You get somebody who grows from, let's say they're doing 2 or 3 million, and suddenly 3 or 4 years later, they're doing 10 or 12 million. They start to see the world a little bit differently. But one of the challenges is, well, if I start to replace myself, I'm no longer running things day to day. What am I going to do next? And it's that mindset that can keep you small instead of realizing you've moved into the investor mindset. Right? That's the same thing that happens in family businesses, which also came up in our internal training. Anyways, Kiyosaki's great. You don't need me to tell you that, but wealth comes from assets. It doesn't come from putting in longer hours or higher paychecks, right? We've spoken many times here about your revenue responsibility per hour, and Kiyosaki would say the same thing if he was standing next to me right now. And again, if you read that book, or if you get your kids to read that book, or you get your GM to read that book, or your partner, or let's say it's a family business, you start to think like investors, not just operators. And again, we cover lots of the stuff in Checkpoint 90 where, we take your financial reports and we benchmark you against the industry. Not only that, but against the industry, we also color code it. So you can see, here's the simple, talk about simple. Some colors are in green. Some colors are in red. Guess what that simple system is? If it's green, you're ahead of industry. If it's red, you're below industry. So that's the first part of the report, maybe the first 6 or 7 pages. The next, call it 6 or 7 pages, jumps into liquidity, valuation, sales, operations, and specifically the recommendations you can make. It's it's a CFO level report, right? For those of you who aren't familiar with a CFO, it's a special type of accountant. Maybe I'll explain that more in a second. But anyways, look, the Kiyosaki book is great. You don't need me to spend more time telling you that. The book's like off the top of my head, it was written in 98, maybe 2000. So it's somewhere in that, it's almost 28 years old for sure. 28, 29, 20, let's call it 25 years. It's old. It's an old book. You're like, Rubino, why aren't you telling me the fancy new stuff? Because I didn't. I'm telling you the stuff that works. So before I dive into that profit conversation, I just promised a second ago, I want to define a couple things that a lot of us probably take for granted. I'm going to do this off the top of my head, right? But as you're building your team, there's different specialists you're going to need on the finance side. This has nothing to do with me. These are different finance professionals you're going to need. So when you're small, you and your wife could do your books. But when you're a $20 million company, you have very different financial goals and concerns, to be frank. And you might find yourself in a place where, let's say you're the dad and you want to pass this business on to the kids, or your kids don't want to take it over and you want to do a management buyout, right? Or an ESOP. You want to sell it to a private equity firm, right? Accountants, there's different kinds of accountants. An accountant's not an accountant is not an accountant. So I'm going to do this off the top of my head, but I'll take this from the levels of the most basic to the most advanced. And I'll do it in that order. So hopefully I get this right. If I did it wrong, send me a text message. You guys know how to get in touch with me, or send me an email. I'll do my best here. I'm doing this off the top of my head, and I'm not a CPA. So those of you out there who are CPAs, you just get your pen ready. But let's start at the very basic level. So you got a bookkeeper. That's your basic starting point with financial controls inside your company. So day-to-day transactions, taking care of the bills, looking over payroll, invoices, bank reconciliations, receipts. Now their focus, and that's what you want it to be, is on accuracy and record keeping. Now they work in the numbers, right? So that person's going to be in the numbers, but not really on the business, if that makes sense. Now, of course, if your partner or if your wife or spouse is doing that, maybe there's a little crossover, but a bookkeeper is just counting the bills and making sure that the numbers are clean. And that's actually a really important part of growing the business, is to have faith in your bookkeeper and in the work that they're doing. So after the bookkeeper comes the role of accountant. And we use this word, like we all throw it around. Oh, this person's an accountant. So it's the catch-all word, right? It's like saying, oh, you're a carpenter. Well, are you really a carpenter, or are you something more than a carpenter? So in the finance world, saying accountant's like calling you a carpenter, right? You actually do more than just carpentry, but it's called a carpenter. But your accountant, I would rely on my accountant to prepare my financials, making sure we're compliant, tax, reporting rules, maybe a little bit of HR stuff, not doing the HR stuff, but making sure that that's all in order. And really that person I'm going to rely on them on accurate and timely and organized reports. Very little humor on my side for late reports or messy reports or missed things in the reports. And that's what an accountant should be better at me than that, right? And they're going to, your accountant internally is going to coordinate with your CPA, probably externally outside your company, right? We'll get to that in a second. Okay, so we go bookkeeper, then we go accountant, then I'll say controller. Some people have an accountant/controller. I don't want to confuse things, but then your next level would be a controller. A controller would manage your accounting department. So imagine your business is at the point where you've got a couple of accountants, or maybe a bookkeeper and an accountant. Then you might want a controller next, right? So they manage that department, the internal financial controls, the reporting. They want to make sure reports are accurate, timely, and trustworthy. They're probably going to do a couple of other things as well, but they're really managing that department and making sure that we're in line with that. And they're going to start to analyze trends, not just recording them. So you're going to rely on them a lot more. But now we're going to be up in the chief financial officer range. And that's what I was talking about with the Checkpoint 90 report that we generate. I'm very proud of, because the only people that use this report other than myself and my coaching team are CFOs. And I'll be honest, I'm not supposed to have access to the database where this report comes from. It took me about 2 years to get access to this database and to be a subscriber to it. It is hard to get. It's hard for me anyways, because we're not accountants. We're not CPAs. We're not even bookkeepers. We are business coaches. And so it took a lot of discussion on my side. I'm actually very proud of it, because we're probably the only business coaching organization, professional business coaching organization, that has reliable, solid, results that's based on a proven database. So that's what your CFO is going to use. So a CFO is shorthand for Chief Financial Officer. So All of the other positions I told you about in accounting look behind you. All of them look behind you, right? The accountant looks behind you. The bookkeeper looks behind you. The CFO is more of a strategic finance person. They're going to now help you look forward, long-term planning, risk assessment, investments, growth decisions. So they're going to say things like, hey, we've got this machinery in our shop or in the field with the amount of time left on that machine and the amount of depreciation on that machine. We should be buying a new one or thinking about leasing it in 1.7 years. That's part of a CFO's job, and way more than that. If you're a CFO listening, you're rolling your eyes right now, but I tried. I'm doing this off the top of my head. But really, look, I'm going to rely on my CFO for forecasting, for financial strategy, like I said, risk management, and really advising me as the owner, right? Really wise counsel. So a CFO is going to be a senior level person. They're probably, by this point, when you have a CFO, you see yourself as a CEO, Chief Executive Officer, right? So much less about bookkeeping, more about building the future of the business. Hey, folks, I realized I haven't given you my cell phone number. If you want to text me at any time, just text me at 315-903-7853. Thanks. Okay. I still haven't gotten to the meat and the potatoes of this episode, but hopefully that gave you some perspective. And if you don't have one of those financial positions, or you're thinking about it, or you're in a situation where you are a family business and you want to grow, but you're not getting good reports, give me a call, send me a text, and say, hey, Dom, we got to talk about my finances. And then I'll walk you through what other contractors are doing right now about that same discussion. All right, let's get back into gear here. So today I want to talk about what Dave Ramsey and Robert Kiyosaki would say if they were hanging out with you around the fire after a day of hunting in Montana for elk with your bow. So we'd be talking about how do we go from cash flow and deposit stress to profits, right? So you got Dave Ramsey and Robert Kiyosaki. I don't know if they hunt, by the way. They might be offended at that, but I'm not. So you got two money mentors there with you around the fire, two very different styles, right? But they both agree on something. Cash flow is king. Cash flow is king. The analogy I like to use, and you may have heard this before, is that cash flow is like breathing in your company. You don't need to make more money. You need to manage what's already in front of you, right? So we're going to blend a little bit. My notes here blends Dave Ramsey's discipline with Kiyosaki's mindset and his cash flow quadrant, and show you how to build wealth today that doesn't depend on you on the tools, right? And I don't want you on the tools anymore. It's time for you to build opportunities for other people to work for you and make sure that you're adding your highest and best use to the company. Now, Dave Ramsey is going to talk about controlling your cash, or it's going to control you. So he's sitting on the left side of you at the fire. He's going to say, you got to gain control over your money, or the lack of it's going to control you. That's a pretty close quote to what he says. Now, what that means is knowing exactly where every dollar goes, not just in the books, but in real life. Most shops, most contractors, whether you have field operations or shop operations, the profits bleed out in the little leaks. I call them the profit leaks, right? There's little tiny leaks. It's like death by 1,000 cuts. It's nothing fancy. It's a little bit here and a little bit there. And before you know it, you're a $20 million business with 2% net margins. You're working way too hard for no profit. And profit is the reward we get as owners for all the risk and sacrifice and work that we put in. So most contractors bleed their profit in tiny little leaks. Normal stuff, right? Nothing fancy. Supplies, materials, overtime, rework. That one's got you rolling your eyes. Rework. How frustrated are you at rework, right? When you plug those leaks, you'll find your raise, the money you're going to be taking home to your family at your kitchen table, right? So this is, again, where you want to look at those industry benchmarks that we use when we're working with people to talk about how you are against the industry. I mean, you might look at the shop across the street or the crew that's working across the street. You're building a warehouse complex and they're building a warehouse complex, and you think, hey, we're all contractors, but I wonder how they're doing things different. Well, you can't necessarily go work for them for a week and find out, but we could benchmark the industry and make some intelligent guesses based on good, clean data that tell us how our competitors are operating. Remember I said numbers tell a story? Well, the numbers tell their story as well. So you can look at how others are doing. And remember earlier I said green and red. Well, where you're green, you're good. Where you're red, not so good. That's about as simple a system as you can get, right? Now, Dave Ramsey would also say you got to build discipline before you build your dreams, right? And we all know this. You know this. You're probably trying to teach your kids the same thing. And maybe you've got somebody in your family who cannot hold money. It just burns a hole in their pocket. Winning at the money game is 80% behavior and 20% in your head, right? You can't out earn bad habits. Like you can't work out more than the bad eating. It's the same thing, right? You can't outproduce poor planning. You can get your crew to work harder. You can get them to do overtime. But if all you're doing is creating rework, you just created rework. Nothing fancy there, right? So Ramsey focuses, and this is why I go back to him and read that book a lot. It's actually on the shelf behind me here. If you can see it, Total Money Makeover. You just got to build small, consistent money habits. Review your P&L weekly. Track your cash flow at least monthly, and pay yourself out of the business. Make sure that you're getting paid. On that point alone, I could have included a little bit of Mike Michalowicz and Profit First, another excellent book, just great book on cash and cash flow management. But let me now flip over to Kiyosaki, right? Because we got Dave Ramsey's perspective, which is powerful, right? Simplicity of those systems. And then you got Kiyosaki on the mindset part. And remember, being a business owner, this is obvious. Being a business owner is different than being on the tools. But the real simple picture is at some point you decided to start working from the neck up. You started working with your head instead of with your hands. Nothing wrong with working for your hands. I can't tell you how satisfying it is to see something built or demolished at the end of the day, right? That's satisfying. You know, you did something. Right now, I look around, my desk is either clean or it's dirty. That's all I got, right? But that mindset part of working from the neck up, that's more that Kiyosaki side, which I really like for mindset. Again, great book for the kids. So stop working for money. Got to find ways to make money work for you. One of the things I learned from Kiyosaki years ago, the book's old, I think it said 97, 98, is find a way to invest in paper. I'm like, how do you invest in paper? And he wasn't talking about investing in a paper factory or investing in a factory that makes books or investing in, paper futures. What he was talking about is invest in contracts. And over time, as I've become, I'm certainly not sophisticated, but as I've become more sophisticated, as I've seen more deals, you realize there's trusts out there that you can invest in. There's people who aggregate assets together. There is, for quite a while there, I was the global master franchisor for a company. So I sold paper, right? For a while, even before that, I sold money, right? I was selling paper. You can make money work for you by selling all sorts of different assets or managing different assets. It doesn't just have to be the business you're in right now. One of the things I'm personally the proudest of is when one of my clients, and I know at least two of you are listening, I know 3 of you for sure have done this, have grown their business to the point where they've bought their building and have now become a landlord. But they're making enough off being a landlord that they're paying less in mortgage than they used to pay in rent. And if that doesn't make sense, shoot me a text. We'll get on the phone. I'll explain how that works. But there's at least 3 of you out there that I personally know of. 2 of you that listen to the show. The other one doesn't listen to the show. That's what I mean. But look, the rich don't work for their money. They make money work for them. It's a different mindset shift. How can I get money to work for me? And look, my friend, you are building money every time you build a project. The beauty of our business is every time you build, every time you work on a contract, by the time that contract's over, you've learned a bunch of things. So that's job A. Well, you apply what you learned from job A to job C because job B has now started. But the beauty is after you learn on job B, you apply that to job D. That's what Kiyosaki's talking about, right? We're not talking about Wall Street fancy talk. It's as simple as that. Keep things simple. Simple. And if you read that book, you'll finally understand what it means to own assets that produce cash flow, not just chasing revenue. You want to chase profitability. You want to build machines, whether they're human machines or mechanical machines that earn while you sleep. Again, more information on this when you do the Checkpoint 90. If you ever get a chance to do that with us, you'll be blown away by the report, especially the industry benchmarks and seeing what your neighbors are doing. And again, going back to Kiyosaki, we talked about mindset a lot, but your mindset, it really lends itself to your balance sheet, right? If you think of your foreman, how your foreman runs the shop is exactly how his car looks on the inside. Go look inside your foreman's car or truck. It's a reflection of how they run things. Your mindset determines how your company runs, and it determines your balance sheet. The biggest, most powerful asset we all have is our mind. That is it. There's nothing like the power of our mind. And listen, if you've got two kids, you know what I mean. One of your kids sees nothing but opportunity in the world, and the other kid only sees scarcity and challenges, and everything's trying to get taken away from me. And if my brother got it, I didn't get it. If my sister got this, that means I got less. And it's just how they were born, right? How do we change that? If you train your mind properly, you can create enormous wealth. If you don't train your mind, that's why we get to watch those great TV shows about somebody who won $50 million in a lottery and blew it all and is now bankrupt, right? It's all the power of the mind. Somebody else gets $1 and they turn it into $1 billion. Somebody else wins 50 million and they lose it all in a year. So anyways, Kiyosaki, I can't speak highly enough about the book, especially since it's been around since the late 90s. Think like an investor, not like an operator, and ask yourself those big questions. How can I make this system run without me? So we're back to the simple systems that we talk about here on the show and in coaching and everything we do all the time. Anyways, again, I wanted to keep this at a level of more of a CEO level than get down in the nitty gritty. Covered off a lot of important things, the different kinds of financial experts that you could have inside your business, how to use those different financial experts to advise you and guide you. 2 great books that you can use. Christmas is coming right now. Put them on your wish list. Or if you're going on a long drive with the family for Thanksgiving, buy the audiobooks and listen to that while kids are listening to some song with 6, 7 in it. I don't know. But find a way to educate yourself so you can get to the top of this industry the way you deserve to be. Listen, I really, really, really appreciate you being an audience member of the show. Please make sure to like and subscribe. That does more value to me than you could ever imagine. On iTunes or on YouTube, wherever you're listening, make sure you leave a comment so that other people know there's some value here. And that would do me a massive favor. Speaking of favors, I hope one day I can buy you a cup of coffee, maybe a glass of wine across the table, and we can meet like real humans and have just a normal human conversation. In the meantime, this show will have to do. I hope you got a lot of value from this. I really do. Glad you're here with me, learning and figuring out how to be the top of the industry in your market. And I'm here to help you with that. Thanks for checking in, folks. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.